Welcome to this Field of Glory 2 video. In this one we're going to be talking about general principles and practices. We're not going to mention things like POA very much because that's been covered by other people in very great detail. In this video I'm going to be assuming that you have a basic knowledge of the game, so I'm not going to tell you how to move or how to start a combat, but I am going to tell you how to do it better in general terms. So we're going to cover deployment and organization, movement, shooting, combat, pursuit, and end of turn and start of turn procedures. One of the things I really like about Field of Glory is the way it really helps to have a plan and to be able to execute it. And having an overall plan really does influence your success in the game. So I have created another video about battle plans, and you may like to watch that one, especially if you don't know what a refused flank is. So the first thing you've got to do is planning, and that starts with the very first screen where you get to recruit your troops. So when you're choosing your army, deploy the army as you buy the units, as you recruit them. So normally what you do is you recruit them on the first screen, and then the second screen you start deploying them. But I find it works better if you actually start deploying them while you're recruiting them, because then you can fit them to the terrain exactly. And you have to be able to fit your troops exactly to the terrain quite often, because there may only be very small gaps between different types of terrain which require particular types of troops. So choose units that fit the terrain, that's of course, and press G to produce the grid. As you can see in this picture, there's a grid on the screen, and you can use that to follow from your side right over to the enemy side exactly what is in front of your unit, because your units probably won't be able to move much left or right of where they start off from. So your plan should not be to sit around and wait for the enemy to come to you. That will give the initiative to the enemy. It will allow them to decide where to attack you, and they will attack you where you're weakest. So you want to be able to attack where you're the strongest and where the enemy is the weakest, and that means attacking. And another thing that's good about Field of Glory is it rewards the attacker. However, it is perfectly all right to decide to ignore part of a battlefield and defend it. So the very first thing you do in the game when you're at that recruitment screen is to look carefully at the terrain on your side of the battlefield and on the enemy side, and you've got to find a way of getting from your side to the enemy side. And also, if you don't have enough troops to cover the whole battlefield, which you probably don't, you need to decide where you're going to attack and where you're going to defend. So, for example, in this game between Seleucids and Romans, it was in open agricultural terrain. We have a hill at the top on the enemy side, and we have a build-up area with some rough terrain next to it in the middle on the enemy side. And on the Seleucid side, we have no terrain, really speaking, except for a large wood at the bottom. So what does this mean? We need to formulate a plan. So the plan will be either we go for that hill, because that will give us a big advantage if we're able to take it, and quite possibly that's where the enemy will focus, and so we can try and we will know that's where the main enemy effort might be, so we might want to bash them up there, and by being ready for it we might have a superiority. Alternatively, we can say, well, taking the hill, that's going to be probably too difficult, especially with a Seleucid army, which doesn't have a good number of rough terrain troops. How about we take advantage of the strength of the Seleucid army, which is its heavy infantry, its good mixture of troops, and its especially strong center. So we want to attack in the center, and that means we're going to have to decide we're not going to go anywhere in the top part of the battlefield. We're only going to affect the middle and possibly the bottom. And we can use that wood at the bottom to guard our right flank, possibly. Now, a built-up area is an area where you are not allowed to do flank attacks. Well, you can do flank attack, but it won't cause a cohesion drop. So that makes a good focus for the corner, the left-hand corner of your army. So the idea would be to march over there and have the left flank end of your army in that built-up area. Of course, plans don't always survive contact with the enemy, but that would be your basic idea. So it is very important to work out a plan of attack and fit your army choices and their deployment to suit it. And in this case, for instance, if we're going to go for that built-up area, then we have to have some medium infantry opposite it, and there's a little bit of rough terrain, so we've got to have some other rough terrain troops ready to go there as well if we want to get right over that side of the battlefield successfully. And what we have to do is we have to divide the battlefield into sectors and allocate generals to each sector. And where you put your generals is of critical importance. It quite often determines the success or failure of the battle. So allocate most generals to your strike team. That's the main attack, maybe with about 3 to 6 units per general, and put a few or only one general with the defending sector, or what you might call the losers in this case, because you don't expect them to succeed. You just want the defense section to delay the enemy. When you're allocating your generals, do the CNC last, as he can command any troops and does not need to have a command of his own. And when you're recruiting your light troops, do it in groups of 3, and use no more than 7 light infantry unless you have lots of difficult or rough terrain. Otherwise, I tend to find that about 7 light infantry is enough. If you have more than that, then by the second half of the game, they're standing around doing nothing because they can't shoot or attack things. So divide the battlefield into sectors. Usually it's 3 is enough. And in this example, we're having 3 sectors. The first sector is a defense sector, or a delaying sector, or as I said, the losing sector. Then we've got the main attack in the center, and then on the right we've got a supporting attack, which could be the main attack, depending on how things develop, where we're going to sweep around on the enemy left with our cavalry. We don't want to go anywhere near that hill, and so we're just going to hold the line as shown in the picture. We expect to have cavalry superiority because we've got Seleucids and they've got Romans, and so we expect that the Sector 3 attack will be successful mainly with just cavalry.